All right, for more on this and its impact on the Mexican economy, we're joined from Mexico City by Viridiana Rios. She's the CEO of Mexican think tank, México Cómo Vamos. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good to have you. As authorities are continuing to search for those 43 college students who went missing from the state of Guerrero, and as the protests continue, what are the short-term economic ramifications for Mexico?
Okay, so right now we're seeing a big impact of lack of investment and lack of tourism in the state of Guerrero. Guerrero is the state where the students are missing. But most important than that, and most important than the short-term implications of these problem of security and rule of law in Mexico, is the long-term implications of this. Right now, Mexico was well known internationally as the country of the reforms, the country of the 10 reforms that had changed the panorama of Mexico and the possibility of this country to grow. However, it seems that the most important reform, the reform that was supposed to implement a rule of law and security for every single citizen in Mexico, well, didn't happen. So right now what we are seeing is basically the result of believing that only economic reforms would put this country in the path that it should take.
Well, the Guerrero incident highlights the security issue in Mexico, and the head of Mexico's central bank, Karsten, says that the country's security problems are the country's top obstacle to growth. Is security really the #1 factor holding back Mexico, more so than fiscal policy, global economic conditions, and other factors?
So the Central Bank of Mexico, which is precisely the institution that you're talking about, every month has a poll that asks to the experts and to economic experts in all the country, which is the most important issue that is inhibiting economic growth in the country. And in the last exercise of this poll, 15%, 15, of all Mexicans, specialists in economy, said that the most important problem was crime and rule of law. So even if it is not precisely the top problem of the country, it is one that is very important. So let me put this in perspective. According to Mexico and according to the OECD, the expected gain in economic growth for the energy reform, which was one of the most important reforms that Mexico passed over the last couple of months, was to be an increase of 2% in the GDP growth of the country for the next decade. And what we right now know, according to the figures of the central bank in Mexico, is that the lack of rule of law and the lack of crime is creating basically a lack of also 2% of GDP growth. So what we're seeing right now is that all of the gains that we were supposed to get from the energy reform are being taken back from this lack of security and from this lack of reform. Now, these numbers may be even higher. When you consider the amount of money that employees and that people, general citizens, spend in promoting their own security, the figures go up to 9 or 15% of GDP.
Viridiana Rios, we're having some audio issues with that live feed from Mexico City. We're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much, Viridiana Rios, CEO of Mexican think tank, México Cómo Vamos.